On August 27, 1964, 15-year-old Edmund Kemper walked up behind his grandmother and shot her in the head. He then calmly waited for his grandfather to return home and killed him too. This chilling act was just the beginning of a series of horrifying crimes that would later earn him the nickname the Co-Ed Killer. To truly understand the monster he became, we need to look at his disturbing childhood, the dark family dynamics, and the twisted path that led him to commit some of the most shocking murders in history. Early life. Edmund Kemper's childhood was marked by turmoil and isolation. Growing up, he was subjected to constant belittlement and abuse from his mother, Clarnell Kemper. Clarnell was known for her harsh and critical nature, often taking out her frustrations on Ed. She would lock him in the basement, forcing him to sleep in the dark, surrounded by rats, and she frequently told him he was worthless, fueling his violent fantasies. Ed began showing early signs of his disturbed nature by decapitating his sister's dolls and, later killing family pets. He buried one cat alive, later digging it up to decapitate it, and killed another with a machete. The family dynamics were equally troubling. Clarnell's marriage to Ed's father, Edmund Sr., was fraught with conflict. Edmund Sr. was a war veteran who returned home physically and mentally scarred, unable to meet Clarnell's high expectations. Their constant fighting led to a bitter separation, leaving Clarnell to raise Ed and his siblings alone. She channeled her disappointment and rage into her relationship with Ed, creating an environment of fear and hostility. At just 15 years old, Ed committed his first murders. Using a .22 caliber rifle his grandfather had given him for hunting small animals, he shot his grandmother, who was sitting at the kitchen table. He then stabbed her 3 times to ensure she was dead. When his grandfather returned home, Ed greeted him and shot him in the head. Ed later explained to the police that he killed his grandmother to see how it felt, and his grandfather to spare him the sight of his wife's dead body. This initial act of violence was a clear indication of Ed's deep-seated psychological issues and lack of empathy. Following the murders, Ed was sent to a psychiatric institution. The doctors diagnosed him as a sociopath, but noted his high intelligence and manipulative skills. Ed used his charm to deceive the doctors into believing he was making progress. By the time he was 21, they deemed him rehabilitated and released him, despite his troubling past. After his release from Atascadero State Hospital, Ed attempted to reintegrate into society. He applied to become a police officer but was rejected due to his towering height of 6'9". Instead, he found work with the California Division of Highways as a road construction flagman. At the same time, Ed returned to his mother's house, where the toxic environment and constant belittling by his mother only fueled his disturbed mind further. Serial murders begin. In 1972, Ed Kemper's violent tendencies escalated to serial murder. On May 7th, he picked up 2 hitchhikers, Mary Ann Pesci and Anita Lucchesa. Under the pretense of giving them a ride, he drove them to a secluded area. There, he handcuffed Pesci and locked Lucchesa in the trunk. Despite feeling an odd reverence for Pesci, he ultimately put a bag over her head, stabbed her to death, and then killed Lucchesa in a similar manner. Kemper's psychological state during these murders was complex. While he committed these acts with brutal efficiency, he also claimed to have felt a strange mix of admiration and remorse. He was not driven by sadism, but by a desire for control over his victims. This need for dominance was reflected in his later actions, where he dissected and beheaded the bodies, keeping the heads as trophies. His high intelligence and manipulative nature allowed him to maintain a front of normalcy while harboring these dark impulses. Kemper's killing spree continued with the murder of Aiko Koo on September 14, 1972. He picked her up while she was hitchhiking, then strangled her, and placed her body in the trunk of his car. After killing her, he went to a local pub for a beer, only to return later to admire his catch. This chilling behavior demonstrated his growing detachment and obsession with his victims. In January 1973, Ed killed Cindy Shaw. He brought her body back to his mother's house, where he dissected it in the bathtub and drained it of blood. Kemper kept her head, later burying it in his mother's garden facing her bedroom window. This act was a symbolic gesture of his deep-seated anger and desire for control over his mother. Psychological insights. Ed Kemper's ability to manipulate those around him was a significant factor in his prolonged killing spree. He skillfully deceived psychiatrists into believing he was rehabilitated, despite his sociopathic tendencies. His high IQ and charm allowed him to gain the trust of many, including the police, who never suspected him as he frequently interacted with local police officers at a bar called the Jury Room. Kemper's dual personality was evident. On one hand, he was the friendly, intelligent giant, while on the other, he harbored dark, violent fantasies. Kemper himself was acutely aware of his mental state. He recognized his actions as demented but felt a twisted sense of justification and necessity in committing them. This self-awareness, combined with his manipulative skills, made him an exceptionally dangerous individual, capable of hiding his true nature while continuing his gruesome activities. The climax of Ed Kemper's killing spree came with the murder of his mother, Clarnell. On April 20th, 1973, Ed waited until she was asleep, then bludgeoned her with a hammer and slit her throat. He decapitated her and put her larynx in the garbage disposal, symbolically silencing her incessant criticism. This act provided Ed with a twisted sense of psychological release, as he felt he had finally conquered the source of his torment. Following this, Ed called his mother's friend, Sally Hallett, inviting her over under the guise of a surprise party. When she arrived, he killed her as well, spending the night with her decapitated head. This final murder underscored Ed's realization that all his previous killings had stemmed from his hatred for his mother. With Clarnell dead, he felt there was no longer a need to continue his murderous spree. Ed Kemper made a chilling phone call to the police, confessing to the killings. Initially, they didn't believe him, but when he insisted, they sent officers to his home. His surrender shocked the police and the public, as they were unaware that the amiable giant they had socialized with was the infamous killer. The revelation of his identity left many reeling, as they struggled to comprehend how someone so seemingly normal could commit such horrific acts. Following his arrest, he was later sentenced to life imprisonment without parole. Ed became a valuable asset to the FBI's new serial killer unit. His insights into the mind of a killer provided criminologists with a deeper understanding of psychopathy and the behaviors of serial offenders.
I am an American, and I killed Americans. I am a human being, and I killed human beings. And I did it in my society.
Ed's story serves as a cautionary tale about the importance of addressing mental health issues and the impact of familial dynamics on an individual's development. Thank you for watching, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your support helps us bring you more stories like this one. Goodbye.